Yo, 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 Zane, good to have you back.
Hey man, how's it going?
Yeah, good on my end. Apart from anyone who's watching the actual recording of this, my headphones have just broken. So, RIP to the beats out there. Well, probably good timing because I'm probably going to have to get the Apple headphones. So, hopefully, the audio is still clear for everyone. But yeah, just a heads up if anyone's going to be laughing while they're watching the video.
It's good for
That's obviously
engagement, man.
exactly right.
Whatever
That's
it's
the thing,
all
right?
about.
People think I've got like a wonky earphone or something like that. But yeah, no, it's good. Hopefully, everyone listening to this today, we're going to get the pod straight out. It's the 17th of Jan, so hopefully, we'll hear some news today. So we're going to touch on that. But before we do that, obviously, Zane, you've been jet setting across the world. You want to tell everyone where you've been at? It's kind of a little update on your little venture.
Yeah, for sure. So I went to the Fast Moss conference and spoke on stage and spent some time at the event. So Fast Moss is basically the biggest like TikTok shop analytics tool in the world. So Kalo Data is like a competitor, but it's only known in the US. Like actually, if you go to China and you mention Kalo Data, they have no idea what you're talking about. So Fastmox has this event every year. This year it was a lot more US focused because last year the US was just such a small market. So it was mainly like Southeast Asia. This year, a lot more focus on US TikTok shop. Most of the sellers I met there were doing US TikTok shop. About like 20,000 people attending the event. So it's just crazy. And it's in Shenzhen, China, which is like known for e-commerce. So it's a very like business focused city. I think the city's only like 40 years old, super modern, super techie advanced. Like if you know like DJI drones and some of the other big Chinese brands, like the drone brands and like just like advanced tech is out of Shenzhen. So it's super cool. It was my first time in China. I was really impressed. It was really modern. They have like bullet trains that you could take to like Guangzhou, which is like a close by city. Both are huge cities. It's like Shenzhen's like 16 million people. Guangzhou is
Wow,
16 million people. It's like twice the size of New York City.
that's
Both
really impressive.
cities are like a 2 hour drive from each other. So it's just like mind bogglingly huge when you get to China and like being at the Fast Mouse event and seeing thousands and thousands of sellers and people and like it's just wild. Like just the scope of it is insane. And just like the level of like orderliness, cleanliness, it's just if you've ever been to like Japan or something, it's kind of similar to that, but I would say even like more advanced and more modern. Like their bullet trains go even faster. So I was really impressed. I want to go back every year. It's also great for business. Like if you're like a brand, it's just a really good idea to go meet your factory or go meet like whoever you work with on the China side. They place a lot of emphasis on that. I mean, we do too, where it's like face-to-face meetings are pretty important. But like when you go over there and you like establish like that relationship and they're super friendly. Like they will like you could forget your wallet before you go to China and you'll be fine because everyone's gonna be paying for your dinner, for your drinks, all that. So it's super cool. I think like for brands, makes sense to go over there, meet their factories. If you're like an agency, I think also makes a lot of sense. There's a good number of Chinese brands on TikTok Shop. I know Amazon's around like 60%. I would imagine TikTok
Mm,
Shop it's even more than that because obviously ByteDance is a Chinese company and it makes it a little bit easier for them to get on the platform. So a lot of the big brands that you see on Fastmods are going to be at the event, and they're always looking for more affiliates. Sometimes they're looking for help running their shop. So I think it's just a great opportunity for everyone that does some business with China.
yeah, no, it sounds good, man. I wish I could go out of there, but unfortunately not. So next year, well, yeah, next year, hopefully get to go out there. So from that side of things, obviously, shout out to the Fastmoss team, obviously holding it down for having a great platform as well. But what would you say is what kind of like the key takeaway from the event, would you say, in terms of just from like kind of what the market is looking like and obviously, yeah, just how people are feeling from a TikTok shop perspective?
Yeah, so I got the question like a few times, obviously, about like what I think about the ban. People were generally more optimistic there because they were like, "Oh, Trump said he wasn't going to ban it," and so based on like their system with President Xi, if he said he's going to do something, maybe he can do it unilaterally. But I obviously we here know that like, hey, you got the Supreme Court, you got Congress, you got checks
Mhm.
and balances. Trump can't just do everything. So they seem more relaxed about it until very recently. I have added some on WeChat, and once the announcement or like the news kind of leaked that like TikTok was going to shut down on Sunday, barring any extension, then they seemed more worried. They were messaging me if it was really going to happen. So that was a big question, whether you're in the US or China. A lot of people were asking that question. I think the number two thing, and it's something that you find here as well, is like they were just like very interested in more creators, more affiliates. So the US, that's obviously difficult for brands. That's like the biggest thing. But now imagine you're like, 12, 13 hour time zone difference. They don't even use like Discord or anything over there. They're not on
That's
Twitter a
true.
lot of times. Like some of them are, but they have their own version of Twitter. So like they're even more disconnected to like sources of affiliates, creators, what creators are looking for. So it's a little bit, it's even tougher for them to source creators. And what I also found was interesting is like they were pretty like old school about it, like very manual. Like they would have a team of like 3 or 4 people just messaging people on the TikTok shop dashboard. Yeah, because labor is decently cheap there, so like they just kind of do all that stuff manually. So that was pretty interesting. I think if you're like a tap agency and you go over to Fastmoss conference, you go over to China and you bring your creators with you, I think you're gonna get a lot of attention just because that's like the one thing. Like they're very good at shop management, they're very good at running ads. It's all stuff that you can do on TikTok Shop Indonesia or TikTok Shop in a different locale. They're pretty experienced with that. But then the creators is always that tough part because it's just more of a personal relationship. And
Yeah.
again, they're not aware of like groups like Social Army, Media Labs, like any of those big tap groups, they Creators Corner, they don't know what they are. So it's definitely a huge opportunity for tap.
Yeah, and it's weirded, right? Obviously, like from our perspective, we know that like with the back of our hands, right? And but then a whole different marketplace, which you think would be killing at the same kind of like degree, where it's literally just like the unknown, right? So to get your head around that is kind of like wow, the opportunity for these brands are already killing it and doing well, but there's still that massive opportunity in terms of like, especially like say for your top agencies stuff like that to kind of integrate with these brands. It literally shows how probably how new this industry still is. Because again, people take for granted thinking, okay, yes, TikTok Shop's been around for whatever it, 2 years, however it looks, but still brands are still figuring it out in one way or another, and that's kind of like an interesting part in terms of ways to speak with different people in different markets as well. That is literally still the unknowns to some.
Yeah, 100%. Also, just like when I was in China, it was very clear like their biggest channels was TikTok Shop and Amazon. There wasn't really like a whole Meta presence. Like I think in the US, it's like
Ooh.
most brands are like, oh, 60, 70% of our traffic is coming from Meta. You should just focus on Meta. Like TikTok Shop is like a shiny egg or whatever it is. Over there, it's like it's almost flipped. Like way fewer brands were on Meta. More of them were just on these channels where you can just throw up a product. You don't have to like go through and like build a funnel, build landing pages. Because obviously that's stuff in like if you need to have like a strong understanding, or if you need like native English, you need to have a really strong understanding of like angles and like what makes people tick in the US. That's a little bit harder. So I think Meta was like a little bit
Ooh.
more of an uphill battle for them than just like putting the product up on TikTok Shop or on Amazon, setting a really good price, and then messaging creators and giving out free samples. That's a little bit easier if you're not familiar with the region. So I think that's also like a huge opportunity. There's brands doing like 1 million a month on TikTok Shop that just had zero Meta presence, so where they could easily, get some of their top creators to give them usage rights, pay them for usage rights if needed, and run that on Meta. That wasn't something that they were doing or even really thinking about unless TikTok Shop got banned. Then they were like,
Mhm.
okay, we want to try Meta. So that was very interesting as well, just like seeing that difference and seeing that like flip in terms of like our channels and our channel priority compared to theirs.
Yeah, gosh, it's you just thinking about it, and like listening to you say that the fact that say Meta isn't even like a thing that they even bothered about out there is just it's just crazy. Like I say, the brand is just massive volume, and it's just like I say, it just makes you kind of flip the switch in terms of thinking, okay, yeah, you can obviously run these channels without like say having the Meta or the Googles kind of do that. I mean, which again, it's kind of makes it crazy showing the actual ecosystem that these marketplaces, whether it's TikTok Shop or Amazon, that can have the play it can kind of have for these brands, like I say, to spin up a product, see if it works, or if not, go back to the drawing board. And again, it makes it really effective from that side of things. So no, so it sounds like you had a really good time out there, Len.
Yeah, it was super insightful. I definitely recommend that everyone goes if you do just even a little bit of business in China. I think you'll come away with at least one or two really big takeaways.
Nice, no, that sounds really good, man. So definitely go out there. Hopefully, I'll see you out there as well. Fast Mos's next event. All be well. That obviously TikTok US is still going. So with that segue, let's talk TikTok and obviously the updates again. I would love to speak to you about the updates. I feel like you're literally just like I don't think you sleep right now whilst this whole TikTok debacle's going on. And it's always good to kind of see your posts on Twitter in terms of keeping me up to date. I don't really need to like go on the big media websites. I literally just check your feed out and know what's kind of happening. So with that being said, and obviously for everyone listening, like I say, we are recording this on Friday 17th, so I'm going to get this out today. But where's your head at now in terms of obviously what's going to happen from a TikTok perspective? Has it changed since our last call a few weeks back? And yeah, where's your kind of like head at right now?
Yeah, I think it's still like kind of like a 50-50. Like if you look at Polymarket, like right now on the 17th, right now it's like 9 a.m. Eastern. Like what the where it's at is like 60% chance of a ban.
Mm,
And then if you look at like what is the chance that Trump reverses like in his first 100 days, it's like a 70 something percent. So like those numbers are like not too bad, because then it puts it at like the chance that TikTok gets saved, in like the next couple months is like, pretty high, maybe like 70-80%. I think though that like we still have a solid chance of like in literally like 45 minutes, the Supreme Court might upload a decision as early as like 10 a.m. EST. And I think there's still a solid chance that like today's the 19th or today's the 17th, which is the last weekday that they have before the ban takes place on Sunday. Normally they release opinions on Wednesday. So I think if they were just going to affirm the ban, they could have done that 2 days ago. Today is like the very last day. So like it could be a situation where they need more time to deliberate. I think like the later it got, the higher the chance that they're like, hey, this is a pretty big decision. It's going to have a pretty strong effect. So like we need more time. And which is exactly what Trump asked them to do, is like just extend it to give everyone more time. And even looking at the transcript when they were talking to both the DOJ and they're talking to TikTok, they even asked, they're like, hey, it seems like, there's no chance that you're going to be able to divest by the 19th. And they asked the DOJ, would it be okay if they were to extend it? And the DOJ was like, yeah, that makes sense. But like, also like, we think you should start upholding it on the 19th. So
mm,
they've even asked if maybe they should extend it. I think there's a good chance they extend it. There's also a small chance that they strike it down. If they say this is overly broad, we want the court to, or we want Congress to go back and make a more of a narrow law. There's a small chance of that. So I think between the chance of delay, the chance of them striking it down, I think TikTok has a fighting chance. And then you have Trump on Monday saying that he's considering an executive action to delay things. I think that's probably going to get challenged in the courts as well, because does he really have the right to delay it when Congress has passed it, a president has signed it, which was Biden, and Supreme Court has
mhm,
upheld it? That's all three branches have already weighed in. So I think that would be kind of tough. He could also on Monday be like, oh, there's a deal in progress. Like I know about it. And based on the terms of the deal or terms of the law, I can extend by 90 days if there's a deal in progress. He could also say that as well on Monday. So I think TikTok still has a fighting chance. And early as like, 40 minutes from now, we could find out from the Supreme Court. And by the time we upload this, there might be an extension. Who knows?
yeah, and that's the thing, right? It's just still, it's going to be the unknown, right? And like I say, the fact they've kept it till Friday to kind of announce it, as you were saying, like no news is always good news, right? The kind of that kind of scenario. And the fact is, it's kind of like it would be weird for it to kind of like go down for like let's say the weekend, then it come back up. Do you know what I mean? So it's kind of like there's obviously something in the works that's clearly happening. Whether like say they're all waiting for them to come in, or whether they're going to just extend it, because like I say, right now the extension would make the most sense, right, in terms of that side of things. And then again, if it does get extended, I then think it becomes, from my personal opinion, it then becomes harder for it to then get banned, especially like I say with some coming in and all that side of things as well. But again, like I say, weirder things happen, right? But again, it's just, and again, I was reading earlier, or like I say a few days ago as well, the fact that TikTok shop in the US did 9 billion in GMV. This is crazy to think that all of a sudden, because obviously, if TikTok's around for this year, TikTok can do probably more, maybe even double that. That's to be just wiped out or then just gone. Sure, it's going to have a massive effect on the economy, like say the GDP and all that side of things. So again, it's definitely a bigger picture that, yes, obviously I know it's Congress stuff like that now, but it's just like the reality of it. And not just like say the GDP, but again, think of all the unemployment that can happen. There's a lot of these, let's say, creators who have gone full time doing this because they're making a good living from that. Yes, they might be able to go to another platform and deal with stuff like that, but there's going to be a lot of people who are going to literally be like, where's the next paycheck going to come from, and all that side of things. So I definitely think there's a lot more that will come if it does also just go black out and TikTok is just gone, like say, come Sunday.
Yeah, I think a good person to kind of develop some notes from this on is Kevin O'Leary. Despite what you might think about Kevin O'Leary, I think his offer is not really going to be taken seriously. They're bidding like 20 billion. They're going to buy it without the algo. I don't think it really makes sense. But he has been meeting with Trump. He went to Mar-a-Lago just like a few days ago. I think he understands like where Trump's head is at. And what he said was interesting is like this is a game of leverage, and it's really about who blinks first, because China is trying to say
Mm,
like, hey, we're never going to sell this. If you go like when I was in China and I asked them, I was like, is China going to let them sell it? They're like, there's no way. But it's, at some point, one side needs to blink. Like China obviously doesn't want ByteDance to take multi-billion-dollar hit. They also don't want to then give their IP, like the algo, to a US company and then see the US company being able to replicate that. So I think it could be part of a broader deal. It's just like TikTok is saying, it's like, okay, well, we're going to go dark on the 19th. No problem for us. No sweat off our back. Even though, they would ideally not want to go dark on the 19th. And the US is going to say, like, oh, you're going to have to sell. There's no way around this. They're both sides are trying to make that seem like a thing. And I think TikTok is kind of calling their bluff right now by saying like, oh, okay, well, we're just going to go dark on the 19th. And then you see even the Biden administration is like, oh, maybe we should do something to keep this from going dark. They're like, okay, we're not going to enforce it. Trump can enforce it. Suddenly, the administration that signed this bill is saying like, oh shit, we don't actually want the ban to go in place. They just wanted a sale to happen. They wanted to force a sale. They didn't want TikTok to get banned. They didn't want the legacy or the responsibility of like wiping billions of dollars kind of off the US economy. Trump also doesn't want that his first week in office that he loses on this TikTok ban that he said he was going to fight, and billions of dollars is just goes up in smoke. So neither administration wants to take the fault for this. Nobody wants to actually see it get banned. They were just hoping that a sale would happen. And I think
mhm.
China is like reading the room. They've been pretty, instead of like the TikTok policy team just posting every day, they've been pretty quiet. Like even internally, they've been pretty quiet. The only thing they've told their employees is like, "Oh, you're still gonna have a job," but they've been pretty quiet and calculated, I think, and making it seem like they're just gonna, go dark if nothing happens, to try and force the U.S. government into giving them more time, or striking this down so they don't have to sell. But if it does get banned, like say gets banned on the 19th, and then Trump is like, hey, the only way I'm going to get it unbanned is if you guys agree to sell. Maybe as part of a broader deal where he gives China something and China allows the sale, then that'll go through. But those things take time. And I think like the longer TikTok is down, you have things like Red Note, you have things like Instagram.
Exactly.
People have a pretty short attention span. Like, are they really going to be
Mm.
waiting around for TikTok to get back? And if it goes back up, are they going to go back to TikTok? Those are things that ByteDance definitely needs to consider.
Yeah, that's the thing, right? I mean, like I do poker, and I say I wouldn't like to be playing poker with TikTok right now because it's like, it seems like you're definitely holding their cards close to their chest, and I feel like from their perspective, they're kind of like saying, well, obviously we don't want it to go down, but at the same time, if it goes down, it's not the be all and end all for them, but it's going to probably have a more detrimental effect on the US as a whole, as you said. But I think you made a good point there as well that, and this is why I always make the point that the attention won't just disappear, it will just shift, right? Like you say, obviously Instagram's obviously going to come out with like the create kind of stuff they're doing. Red Note's obviously happening now as well. I see Flips, another platform that's kind of doing make some moves as well, right? So again, from a TikTok perspective, yes, they don't want it to kind of happen. And I think, like I say, if the longer it does take, the better it will be. If it, like I say, is just prolonged. But like I say, if it does go dark, these people, everyone, whereas creators, brands, they're going to obviously move to the next platform, right? Yes, they might come back to TikTok, but again, it's going to take time to transition back to it again, right? So again, it's just figuring out who's going to blink first, like you said, in terms of that side of things. And it's just like, okay, what's going to happen next? Are we going to get an update in the next, like say, 30 minutes or not? Or again, are we just all going to be just waiting until like the last minute? Because again, no one really knows what kind of button to press right now. Because again, one way or another, either this going to go down in history either way, right? Whether TikTok stays live or obviously it gets banned again, it's going to be like a big part of history. But at the same time, it's like US kind of don't want to look kind of stupid in terms of going back now, as you can imagine. But at the same time, TikTok's like, well, yeah, do what you got to do kind of thing. We're obviously going to go down 90, if not. So it's a trick situation.
Yeah, it's also interesting seeing where the attention is shifting already. So you had like there's obviously been countries that have banned TikTok,
Mm,
India being one of them. They have over a billion population. Within like a week of them banning TikTok, it's like everyone went to Instagram or YouTube, which is what the prediction had been in the US. But you're seeing, the US, like the current TikTok users, they're not happy about this ban. they're a little bit more spiteful. They're moving to things like Red Note, which is like really interesting because it's like the Chinese version of Instagram. It's not TikTok. It's not the TikTok because that's Douyin, and Douyin makes it so that you need like a Chinese phone number to register. But for whatever reason, Red Note did not have that requirement. There was already some Americans on there, like a very small amount. So all these TikTokers, not all of them, but so many of these TikTokers are moving to Red Note, which is the Chinese Instagram basically, and it also has Chinese users on it. Unlike TikTok, which is like geo separated from Douyin, it's like you're only going to see Americans on there. They're hopping on the Red Note overnight. Like I had people that had added me on WeChat. They're like, oh, I woke up this morning and all these American friends are on our app. Like it's pretty funny. Like you're seeing Chinese people from China and Americans interacting on this app. Like they're learning from one another. And kind of like when I just came back from China and I was impressed by how futuristic it was. And there were certain things that like we as Americans have been programmed to think about China, one of them being like the social credit score. Like I was over there and I was like, oh man, they're probably not going to jaywalk because like they have the social credit score. And it's like if it was obvious there's no cars coming and it was like a short distance, people would be jaywalking. And I was like, huh, okay, that probably not a thing. And I asked someone about it and they're like, oh yeah, like that's never really been a thing. Like sometimes for businesses similar to like a credit score, if you're not paying back loans, like they have some system like that, but they don't have like a social credit score where it's like, hey, I like if I tell somebody on the street like F you and then like my score drops, or like I do something like Black Mirror style and like I get canceled. Yeah, they don't have that. And it's like there's so many things in China that like I think US people are starting to wake up to. It's like, hey, their life it might even be better than some people in the US. Of course, they don't have like the same level of privacy, the same level of free speech, but like their cars, like I sat in like a Huawei or however you say it, which is banned in the US. Like that whole company got banned a while ago. But like the electric vehicles there are like nicer than Tesla, some of them, and for like half the cost. And so many people have them too. It's not just like an upper class thing. It's like you're walking around and it's like a lot of the cars are EV. Their groceries aren't too expensive compared to like their take home pay, their health insurance, and like when they go to the hospital, the bills aren't too bad. It's like US people are seeing that now. And I think it's been like a pretty big backfire for the U.S. government, where they were trying to paint, obviously, because it's a political enemy. You don't want people to think of them to be similar to the U.S. Because if there's ever a situation where we have to go to war with China or we have to escalate the trade war, you want people to think like, oh, they're nothing like us. Like, sure, let's do it. But like now, people are starting to realize they're like, wow, they're pretty similar to us. They even have a better life in some ways. Obviously, China's not perfect, but there are certain things that U.S. consumers are starting to see. It's like, wow, they actually have it better than us. And I think it's been a pretty big backfire. I think like the U.S. government probably is not loving that. Now they're talking about maybe banning Red Note. Even the Chinese government is thinking like, maybe we should separate the Chinese app and the US app when it comes to Red Note. So it's all been really interesting. Like you're seeing people posting on Red Note with like Mandarin subtitles. You saw like I think Duolingo said there's like over a 200% increase in people learning Mandarin. It's like it's been super interesting like seeing that play out. And so there's always like these second order effects of things like the TikTok ban that it's hard to predict sometimes.
Yeah, and that's the thing, Ryan. Quick, can you know about Red Note before like last 10 days, 2 weeks ago? Literally, right? So again, it's like this kind of like thing has been out there, but no one really knew about it until this whole situation happened, right? So again, it's kind of just it's eye opening. And I think as well from perspective, I think everyone is kind of like brainwashed quite a bit by my take, but yeah, brainwashed by obviously the media and obviously how the media kind of paints whether it is different countries or even this whole kind of situation as well. So again, it's always interesting where you kind of have to get the information from because again, let's imagine, especially the whole TikTok side of things, and you look at a lot of the media outlets, it's all kind of towards against TikTok being banned because again, obviously when he talks politics talks, all that kind of side of things. So again, it's kind of I think people are sometimes swayed without actually knowing the actual full information, what's actually out there. And again, that's what kind of makes some people's decision, which again, I guess is kind of how the world kind of goes. Or hey,
Yeah, for sure. It'll be interesting to see how everything plays out. Like if I were the government now, it's like better to have people on TikTok where it's just US people than to have them start like moving to these Chinese apps where there's both Chinese people and American people. So it's also interesting. It's just like the way the law was written, obviously it didn't try to single out TikTok. but like which apps does it apply to? Like, does it apply to RedNote? Does it apply to CapCut? Does it apply to
Yeah.
everything that's Chinese owned? And I think it almost lends credence to the argument that like maybe this law is too broad when people like we don't know exactly what is included in the ban. So I think it also lends some to the argument that like maybe Congress needs to go back and write a more narrow law.
Yeah, 'cause that's a good point you make as well. Because let's say, like CapCut, for example, which again, yes, I know it's obviously under the same kind of umbrella, quote unquote, but at the same time, people use CapCut for all of the stuff rather than TikTok as well, right? But does that mean that obviously then goes as well, like say any other kind of app stuff like because like I say it is quite broad, even though technically it's just kind of specific to the whole TikTok debacle, right? So yeah, definitely there's a lot of gray areas around this right now, which again I feel like Congress in the US, I feel like they thought it was going to be a lot easier said than done. Like you say, hopefully sale would happen. But again, right, China stuck to its ground and obviously TikTok stuck to its ground. So yeah, there's going to be still a lot more to come from that. So with that right now, how are you kind of planning for the next steps, whether it's pro or yay, TikTok continues going into like Monday morning, you wake up and obviously TikTok's still here, or obviously Monday, TikTok is gone dark for whether it's whatever, or for a short period of time. What are you doing right now, whether it's from agency perspective, brand perspective, creative perspective? What's kind of your play right now?
Yeah, so I think like for a lot of agencies, it's like you have all these clients that are like, "Oh, we're ready to get started, but we're gonna wait to see how the band plays out." I think that's very common. You're seeing the same thing for like SaaS tools, like outreach bots and things. Like they have people that are really interested, but like it doesn't make sense for them to start investing money today when next week it could be banned. So if the ban were just to get like reversed or like extended, I think we'd be super busy just dealing with that because like things have just like backed up. It's like you had everyone from like November, December when they were on holidays that were like ready to go, but they're on holidays. Then January where they're worried about the ban. You get like 3 months worth of leads that are just got really stuck in the process. Where if the
Yep.
floodgates were open, we would just be trying to deal with all that. If it doesn't go our way, where it looks like TikTok's not getting back up, what we've been telling certain brands is like just to download everything that they have posted on TikTok that's done really well. Anything where they have like a relationship with a creator where they've already gotten usage rights, just like make sure all those videos are downloaded in a folder for the brands that aren't on Meta. We can easily run that for them. So we have a couple Chinese clients that aren't running Meta. So it's like, okay, if this were to go down and we have creatives, we have the usage authorization, we have like some of the creator information, their WhatsApp, so we can communicate with them. We can get more videos. They could do pretty well on Meta. They could even do better on Meta, and they're not on that platform. So that's one thing that we're looking at, and then just other channels as well. I think for a lot of TikTok shop related like agencies and things like that, like the likelihood is so 50-50 that like on a risk adjusted ROI perspective, it probably doesn't make sense for you to just like pause all your TikTok shop stuff and start working on something else when like, you got Trump saying that like, hey, I'm gonna get rid of this ban. So it doesn't really make sense for us to pivot super hard, but we're just like at that point where we're like very ready. We're like ready to make changes. We have people and leads coming from like the China conference where it's like, okay, TikTok shop's no longer around. Let's talk Meta. Is that something that you're interested in?
Nice. Yeah, I like how you mentioned that. Sounds like say not fully pivoting, but kind of just prepared for it as well. Because what kind of percentage, if you don't mind sharing, in terms of like is your US clients right now? Would you say it's pretty much 100% in terms of what brands who are running on US TikTok shop, or is it a bit more diverse than that?
Most, yeah, 90% of our brands are US based. But I think
Okay.
one thing that I kind of took away from being at the Fast Mouse conference is like knowing that like 60% of Amazon is Chinese brands, TikTok shop probably somewhere around there, and knowing that like so many of them have just don't have access to the US market and US creators and just like that US style of marketing. I think for us it would be a big opportunity to pursue the China market more because here it's like you're competing with other US agencies. You have
Mhm.
things that set you apart, whether it be like your case studies, whether it be like maybe you have a very strong like internal creator network that can set you apart a little bit. But then when you're talking to Chinese clients where they don't know a single other US agency, the thing that sets you apart is like, hey, you're a US native agency. You know exactly how the US consumer thinks. So I think that is kind of like a blue ocean. And I think as we see, like you've seen a lot of like debate on Twitter about like banning Amazon sellers or banning Chinese Amazon sellers and like kicking them out of the market, forcing them to pay US taxes. And I think what a lot of what's missed is like if you are a private label brand or you're drop shipping, you are just a middleman between the Chinese factory
Exactly.
and the US consumer. You're not producing the good. A lot of times you never design the product. Obviously it's different for some US brands that are designing it. They're dealing with knockoffs. That's very frustrating. But there's a lot of US brands selling an FBA on Amazon. They never developed a product. They're just sticking their label on it. They found the product from like Alibaba or just like messaging Chinese suppliers. And now they're like, up in arms that like Chinese sellers are selling it for less than them on Amazon. Well, it's like, what did you think was going to happen? As the world gets more globalized, the people that are making it and are on boots on the ground with the factory, and they also have access to Amazon, why wouldn't they try to sell it direct to the US consumer? And I think you're going to see that pick up. It's like every year, more and more of Amazon is Chinese sellers. TikTok
Mhm.
Shop is also majority Chinese sellers. So now I think it makes sense if you're an agency, you can be an agency for a US brand that's then sourcing from China, and it's like layers of like almost like middlemen, or you can work directly with a Chinese brand or like a Chinese factory, develop the brand yourself, or if they already have the brand, just help them market it in a more US centric way. I think that's a big opportunity, and I think that might be how things shift a little bit in the future because a lot of the middlemen are getting cut out. A lot of Chinese sellers, they understand that they can go directly to the US market, and it's very difficult to compete with them on price because it's like their boots on the ground with the factory. They know exactly how much it can cost. They're negotiating with the factory in Mandarin. They're on the same time zone. They're going to get a better price than you. They have a much lower overhead than you. Their rent is cheaper. Their labor is cheaper. They don't need to make as strong of margins, especially when you're converting that US dollar into yuan, where it's like it goes a lot further in China. They can make $1 on like a $20-$30 product and be happy. You are going to want bigger gross margins because you have a larger overhead, and then that dollar is not going to go as far. So I think that's a realization that we're having, is that there's definitely a benefit to having more clients that aren't in the US, because then your advantage is like, hey, you understand the US market versus trying to
Mm.
compete for US brands that have a whole, list of agencies that they could work with.
Yeah. And I think that diversity is good. 'Cause like they obviously, yes, all agencies like obviously provide different service, different case studies, maybe different categories, right? But like I say, you are still going to be competing with 5, 10 other agencies, right? That you jump on a call and like, oh yeah, streets of agencies, that's always going to be the case, right? So like say being kind of like with the kind of Chinese like supply directly, then again, do you know what I mean? It's a great kind of angle to kind of go down. So I definitely think you've got a good kind of like scope there in terms of obviously still the wider net, and obviously hopefully like say US market or US TikTok is still there. So because like similar to us, for example, obviously yes, US definitely is a big part of our portfolio of brands. But obviously we've still got obviously clients in the UK, which is good. We're going to be launching in Spain, Germany soon as well. So again, even though from a TikTok perspective, like in US, yes, it's obviously a big deal, but there are other markets where TikTok will still continue, TikTok Shop will still continue as well. And even with that as well, if some of these brands in the US are able to ship to obviously the other country. I know obviously there might be a situation in terms of like register and stuff like that, but again, there will be opportunity for some of these brands to kind of navigate over to the yes, I know they're smaller markets, but there's still an opportunity there as well. Because I know that a lot of UK brands have been starting to looking to going over to the US. What one brand like I Mitchell is obviously in the US as well now and doing pretty well there from the UK. So again, there's definitely that opportunity for scope for maybe as well US brands coming over to the European markets. Then the Mexican market as well is obviously open as well, right? As well. So again, it's definitely still room for these brands to navigate to the other kind of markets from a TikTok perspective.
Yeah, I think it's smart for like TikTok to be rolling out these new markets. I think obviously the US would still be a big hit for them if it were to go down, just because I think it makes up like 40% of their revenue.
Mm.
But then they're diversifying a little bit. I think like the Mexico market is like really high potential. Spain, Germany, like Spain, the population is not huge, but like Germany, I think is like number four biggest economy or something. And they've got
Yeah.
they've got a huge population, so that could be really strong. I think it'll be kind of difficult for some US agencies because it's like they don't really have an edge in Spain or Germany because now they're trying to translate things over to Spain and Germany, and they're probably going to sound a bit similar to like the Chinese sellers because they're not
Yeah.
native to that language.
Like,
I think
yeah,
Yeah, but they still have like at least the experience from the US market, which is really competitive and understanding like the level of investment it takes to work there. What was interesting is when I was in China, there was like a lot of sellers that I met that used to be like in the Indonesia market, or they still were, and that was
Mm,
like, if you could make it in the Indonesia market, you could definitely make it in the US market, because like the Indonesia market was just like way, you had to have way lower margins. It was more like a volume play. Logistically, it was also challenging because there's like so many of these like islands, so a lot of them would try and like move pretty quickly into retail, because e-commerce was like you were selling a product for like $4, where like you were charging like $1 shipping. It didn't really make sense. So it was interesting seeing like the level of insight and experience that they got from like a more difficult market would make like the US market easier for them, more expensive, like an investment standpoint, versus like sending samples out in Indonesia, or hiring affiliates in Indonesia was cheaper. The US was more expensive, but it was like they were used to a market that was just way more competitive. The margins were way lower. The pricing had to be way lower. So I think if you're like a good US agency or US brand that's just like very sharp and you've learned a lot from the US market, then like some of those foreign markets, because like I think Europe, that's just like it's not as aggressive, like risk wise. It's just like the brands are not gonna want to dump tons of money until they see like a return. And then
exactly.
once they are profitable, they kind of want to stay profitable. Versus I feel like the US is just like way more of aggressive risk on culture, where it's like people will dump money and hope that things turn around. So I think they might have like a strategic edge in those other markets if they're able to set up like their logistics, 3PLs, all that.
Yeah, and that's the thing, right? It's definitely opportunity, right? But they say obviously the opportunity is probably not as big. I do think even still, like if US does continue, I do still think as well, like say some of these brands will start to diversify, whether it is like say other markets or like say other channels like your Amazon, if they're not already on Amazon, stuff like that. Just because again, yes, we talk about TikTok, but there's no reason why any of these platforms could something could go wrong or something could happen, right? Do you know what I mean? Yeah, they might seem more big now, but there's nothing to say in the long run something could happen to, let's say, and Meta or Amazon. You just never know, right? So again, you've got to always be diversifying. And again, one thing where I speak to a lot of the people in general is last week as well, is just saying, especially from a customer perspective, especially because it's very hard from TikTok up as it is and like Amazon as well, but try and get as much information and data from them so you actually own that customer. Because then again, if a platform does go down, you've obviously got their data, you've got their information. And again, same with your creators. If you're not already taking them off the platform, get their information. So again, like I say, when that attention does shift, you're already kind of ahead of the pack to kind of like launch another platform. Again, you've got the customers on your email list to kind of get more sales from them, the LTV as well, side of things. So again, it's just all about just always being proactive and thinking ahead. That's why I think the biggest brands will probably still be fine, even like say TikTok shop does take a big portion of that. I know obviously I can't remember the numbers, but I saw Paul from BK Beauty post the other day. Obviously, like TikTok shop takes quite a big percentage, well, made a quite a big percentage of their overall revenue last year. But at the same time, he's ready to kind of navigate and obviously move stuff over to whatever's next, right? So again, you've got to just always be forward thinking because you never know what is around the corner from a ecom perspective anyway.
Yeah, for sure. And I don't know if you saw, like Meta obviously already has like Meta Shop, YouTube has YouTube Shop. I think YouTube
Mm-hmm.
has YouTube affiliate as well. But Instagram just like kind of quietly announced that they're doing like Instagram affiliate. They're like beta
On the
testing that.
radar.
Yeah, exactly. So I think like, I don't think it's gonna be ready by the 19th, but I think it would be really smart for them to launch it at the same time as like TikTok getting banned. I think it might even be like too much interest. Like I think they might not be ready for it. There might still be things to work out. Or it just like makes so much sense for them. It's like either YouTube or Instagram should make some big push if TikTok gets
Mm.
banned, and be like, hey, if you're an affiliate, if you're a creator, come over here. We'll do everything that TikTok was doing. We'll handle the attribution. We'll handle the payouts. There's plenty of brands on here, just like request a product from them, post it, tag the product. We'll deal with everything else. I think it's just like a no brainer for Instagram. A lot of the time that like people ask me, they're like, why isn't YouTube or why isn't Instagram like copying TikTok Shop and just like launching it, and everyone would move there, even during this time of uncertainty where people are not sure TikTok's going to get banned. I'm sure a lot of creators will start to try and get traction on these other platforms because they're worried that TikTok will go down. They still haven't done it for YouTube. I think for Google, it's just like, like TikTok Shop was like, maybe it's doing like 100 million or $1 billion. For Google, I don't know if that even makes sense for them to go super hard
Just got
after it,
so
because it's like at the end of the day, they have like almost a monopoly on search. Like 90% of their revenues for coming from Google search. They're making billions and billions. Everything else is almost just like to cover up the fact that they have a monopoly there and that they're
Yeah.
just, just crushing it. And so I don't know if it really makes that much sense for them. Meta, I think it makes more sense. Like, yeah, they're a huge company. They're making a good amount from Meta ads, but it makes sense for them to get into this market and go after like the TikTok shop kind of social selling phenomenon. So like hopefully that accelerates a bit where if it doesn't get extended, if it gets banned, if within a week or two everyone can just transition to Instagram, I think that could be really solid, especially since the Instagram or like the Meta ads algorithm I think is better than TikTok. TikTok in general, like the video algorithm, I think is the best over Reels or over YouTube Shorts. But like the ads on Meta has always been able to scale a lot higher. So if you have Meta ads algorithm and then you come up with a video algorithm that's at least 80-90% as good as TikTok, if Instagram Reels can get there, that could be super powerful for brands where they can scale much higher than they were able to on TikTok Shop.
Yeah, and you kind of touched on the next question I was going to ask you as well, because again, the main thing I would say from an Instagram perspective is like say that organic kind of algorithm, which I personally don't think is the best. I think definitely on the ad perspective that would scale. So do you think at the point, and let's say today where Instagram sits with how the algorithm works, do you think it would be strong enough for creators to go on there and be able to get the same kind of traction that they are getting from TikTok from an organic perspective? Or do you think that a lot of that content will need to be pushed with obviously ad spend to kind of get it out to the wider kind of audience, again, just based on, like I say, stuff goes a lot less viral or again reaches certain audiences based on, like say, the algorithm what Instagram currently has? What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that's $1 million question because it's like, why did TikTok Shop take off? I think part
Mm.
of it was like they shifted the algorithm to favor those shop posts, and they also did like crazy subsidies. It wasn't like just like a very organic phenomenon where it's like they introduced shop and like suddenly shop started to pick up and people were like, oh wow, I love seeing shop videos in my feed. Let me start liking them and commenting on them so I see them more. That's not how it happened. I think they made it so like if you added a shop link in the beginning, like it was like bonkers. It was like you would get so many views. It would just like organically push it. People started getting mad. They're like, oh, 1 out of 4 videos I see in my feed is like a shop video. There was that whole thing. And then like the subsidies were nuts. It was like TikTok would pay like up to like a 40% discount plus pay for free shipping. Like when BK Beauty started to blow up, it was just like they were getting paid from TikTok more than they were really getting paid from the customer. So like TikTok really pushed it because they had in the back of their mind, they're like, okay, we have TikTok Shop in all these different, geos and it's working great. It'll work in the US. We'll just take everything we're making from ads or whatever it is, and we'll use that to subsidize Shop until Shop starts getting going. And then you've seen them pull back on a lot of those subsidies. Is Instagram going to do the same thing? Is it going to make shop videos get prioritized in the algo? Is it going to do these crazy subsidies? Maybe not. Same with YouTube. I don't see YouTube doing that. So it's like a lot of creators have been saying like, oh, I'll just move to Instagram and like I know how to sell. I'll make it over there. I don't know if it'll work that way. We could see like a regression to what it was like before TikTok Shop, where it's like if you were a creator, you did UGC work and you got paid a flat fee. You like made a video for $150. The brand would go take that video and they would run ads with it, and that was it. So it's going to take some time, and it's also just depends on the platform, like the priorities. Like, does Zuckerberg want Shop to become like 1 out of 5 videos on Meta when it already is making so much off of Meta ads, which I don't think TikTok really had. It's like you had some brands spending on TikTok, but they could never really scale that high. So like they had a decent ads platform, but like Meta has like one of the strongest ads platforms. Do they want to like then quote unquote compete with that by doing Meta Shop? Because like on TikTok, that's basically happened. It's like you can't really run TikTok ads to website anymore because it seems like all the priority and like the better CPMs are going to shop. Is Meta going to be willing to make that same move when they make way more money off of ads and like their ads platform is really good? I'm not sure if they will.
Because I think, right, something has to give, right? Because obviously you've got X amount of real estate, right? Whether it's on the video feed, whether it's on the search, whether it's on your toolbar, right? So again, obviously, like if you think like TikTok, how it looks now, you got your shop button, you've also got the shop videos, you've got the shop section, you've got shop pages. So again, a lot of real estate has been lost. And like I said, because Meta and Instagram makes so much money from an ads perspective, someone's going to have to shift there, right? Because if not, then the platform is going to become too ad heavy and it's going to also become too shop heavy. So then again, from a user perspective, are they going to want to see that? And it's like, will they then kind of be like, oh, well, Instagram is now just serving me with like products every like 1, 2 kind of posts, right? So again, it's then like you say, Zuck has to kind of figure out what is the balance. Well, and this might be the reason why, again, it's taking them so long to maybe develop a product that's going to be worthy for the kind of Instagram audience as well. Because again, at the end of the day, right, the audience is the most important person for these platforms, right? So if they can't get that right, and then obviously there's a influx of people moving away from Instagram, right, that's going to be more detrimental because less people on the platform, less ads, and all that kind of stuff as well, right? So yeah, it's definitely a fine line to kind of get it right, which is probably what they're kind of figuring out right now.
Yeah, honestly, for like Meta, they could do nothing and win. Like they know that
Exactly.
okay, some people are gonna get a red note, but like that might get old after a while. It's like, hey, you're on a platform where like every other video is like in the language that you don't speak. That might just be like a novelty thing. Eventually, people are gonna be on Instagram again, or they're gonna be on YouTube. So like Zuck could do nothing and he could win in the scenario if TikTok gets banned. Versus like you're saying, like there's so many UI differences between TikTok. They have the shop section, they really had to go after it because their ads just weren't working. Their algo wasn't as good. And I think their algo wasn't as good because they just didn't have the longitudinal data that Meta has. Like Meta has like 15 years worth of your data now. TikTok
Yeah.
has like a few years. So like Meta was able to predict like when you're gonna buy your next pair of socks versus like TikTok is just like this just doesn't have as much data. So
Mm.
yeah, it's an interesting point. Like I think a lot of people are just riding on the fact that like, oh, someone else is gonna copy shop. It could take time, it could take months, it could just like not really happen. So there's really like a lot riding on this TikTok shop decision for creators because it's just gonna it's a completely different model than what it was before, where you're just getting paid flat fee for a video. And it's like if you're a creator, you're not making too much versus on TikTok, like some creators were making, 20, 50, 100 grand on a good month. So it's definitely very different.
Yeah, gosh, I mean, the whole ecosystem, one way or another, is going to change after this weekend. Like, I don't know, this weekend, like, whether just panic or just like, just wait and just kind of act like a normal weekend. Well, hopefully it's with today, and then obviously at least one way or another. I know coming into Monday, you've got to like diversify and obviously make bigger moves or business as usual, right? So, with that being said, Zaid, any final thoughts? We've been going, gosh, 48 minutes again, which is good. So, yeah, any final thoughts for everyone listening? Like I say, we should hope ideal scenario, we should probably know in the next 10 minutes or so. I guess we'll obviously post it on Twitter. But yeah, final thoughts from your side.
Yeah, final thoughts. Download your videos, get your creators' contact information from off TikTok. Prepare for the worst. Hopefully, this won't be the last time you hear this podcast. We'll find out in like maybe an hour or like 10 minutes, maybe. And yeah, just like be ready to pivot, be ready to move in a different direction. But hopefully it won't be too drastic.
Yeah, perfect. I'm saying, yeah, this could be the emergency pod slash the last pods, but hopefully not. Hopefully after this weekend, we're going to be around for a long time doing this pod. But Zane, as always, thanks for being on here and obviously sharing your wisdom. Everyone, thanks for listening. You'll subscribe no matter what happens. I'm sure we'll figure out a way to kind of get this pod to you in some way, shape, or form. But yeah, guys, look forward to speaking to you very, very soon.